Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Okay, today is a very special day because we were able to get two of America's most famous authors to come in. They have come all the way from the grave, so let's give them a big round of applause. Okay. All right, let's bring them in. Tell us your names, boys.
Hello, my name is Ernest Hemingway.
I'm Walt Whitman.
Alright guys, we're going to start off with a series of questions, and I'm going to start with you, Ernest. When and where were you born?
I was born on July 28, 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois.
And Walt?
I was born on May 31st, 1819, West Hills, New York.
Very cool. And what were you like growing up? Did you have siblings? Did you play sports?
I played sports. I played football and I liked to box. And I had siblings, but I didn't really care too much for them.
Walt?
I didn't play any sports growing up, but I did.
Do you need some water?
I didn't play sports growing up, but I did have 9 brothers and sisters.
Very nice. Did you ever get married or have any kids?
I have a funny story about this one. You see, I've been married 4 times, and I had 3 children. We tried for a 4th, me and my last wife, but she ended up having a miscarriage. I had 4 marriages, like I said, and none were very successful.
What about you, Walt?
I never did marry or have any children of my own, so no.
What do you like to do in your spare time?
Personally, I like to drink and write, and that's about it.
Very nice. What about you, Walt?
I enjoy long walks on the streets, riding the ferry, and going to museums.
Now tell us about your parents.
Well, my parents, they were not very supportive of my writing. My father, Clarence, he was a doctor, and my mother, Grace, she was a music teacher. My mother and I didn't get along very well because whenever I was a young boy, she tried to dress me up like a lady to try and make me look like my sister's identical twin. She never let me cut my hair, and she made me wear girls' clothing, and that really upset me. I think it may have set me back a little bit. I don't like her.
Okay.
Growing up, I was closer to my mother, Louisa, due to the fact that my father, Walter, always got drunk, and he was very violent, and my mother was very supportive and cared for me and nurtured me growing up.
So what influenced you guys as a writer? Ernest?
Well, I was very influenced by my own personal experiences. I like to put experiences I had in my own life into my books to teach people things. Such as whenever I had an affair with a nurse, whenever I was an ambulance driver on the Italian front during World War I added that into one of my books, Farewell to Arms, which you can buy at a local bookstore.
Na na na!
I lived through World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II.
You see, my influences for writing was completely different than Ernest's. I was influenced by feeling and not action or what was happening around the world. I love to write for the cause of inspiring others and making them feel better about themselves or what was happening around the world. During the Civil War, I published my poem Beat Beat Drums as a patriotic rally call for the North. My brother George actually joined the Union Army during this time and would send me very brief describing letters of the battlefront during this time. I enjoyed helping lots of people, so when he left the Union Army, I was able to go take care of him during this time in 1872 and took care of him and my mother, who was now 80 years old and struggling with arthritis.
Alright, I'm going to have to stop you there, Walt. We are off topic and I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. Alright, Ernest. Were your parents supportive?
Actually, sadly, no, they weren't. Whenever they had received one of the first copies of one of my first books that had been published, they were very angry at what they had read. I don't truly understand the meaning behind their anger, but my father was so angry that he wouldn't even allow the book to be in his house. As soon as he read the first page, he stopped reading and he had to send it back to the publisher because he didn't want, quote, such rubbish in his house.
What about you, Walt?
It's not that I didn't have supportive parents, but at the age of 13, they did leave me alone, and I found my first job as a newspaper apprentice, and I had to take care of myself and fend for myself. I didn't mind being on my own, but at times I did miss my family, and they would come visit me sometimes. I moved back with my parents when I became a teacher, and that's just...
What's some advice you could give writers today?
Well, you didn't say my name, but I'll go ahead and give you a piece of my mind, Ellen. I would tell writers to write from the heart, say the truth only, maybe give some of your own experiences to teach them a thing or two.
Walt?
I feel the same about writing from the heart and telling how you really feel and not bringing them down by personal experiences, Ernest, but to lift them up and encourage.
What were some challenges you faced growing up as a writer? Ernest?
Well, I didn't really find much trouble or face many challenges with writing. I was a natural writer. Whenever I was in high school, I wrote for the school newspaper, and that's actually where I wrote my first articles. And then after high school, I ended up not going to college to further my education. Instead, I got a job at a newspaper company through my uncle, which was rather nice, and I worked there, and I ended up being a reporter for 2 other places and ended up writing my own books, and I don't know, I guess it was pretty easy for me.
And Walt?
I did find trouble here and there sometimes, but as far as me writing books, there was no difficulty. I was fired from my full-time journalist job, which was my favorite job, because my secretary did not like Leaves of Grass when it was published. He found it offensive in some sort. And I ended up moving away with my mother after. But I've always had a job with writing, and my skills never did fail me.
How did you spend your last years on Earth, Ernest?
Well, to be honest, I spent mine drinking, depressed, and quite lonely. I did not talk to many people. My father actually committed suicide whenever I was middle-aged. That really upset me, but during my last years, yes, I did. I basically spent it drunk, writing, reading, and lonely.
Walt?
For me, it was the complete opposite. I worked in a hospital and cared for many wounded soldiers, and my mother, she had arthritis, so I cared for her and my brother after he came home from the army. I myself suffered. My mother had arthritis, and I myself suffered from a stroke during this time in 1882. So I was stuck living with her and my brother. After that, I bought a house in Camden, New Jersey, and I continued to publish and write new versions of Leaves of Grass. Then in 1892, I died from having pneumonia.
That sounds awful. And how did you pass, Ernest?
Well, this is kind of awkward. I committed suicide.
Why?
I was not happy. I was not a happy camper. My life was depressing towards the end. I had really nothing to live for anymore, so I, what are you doing, Walt? Sit.
Well, thanks guys for coming on the show today. I know it probably took you a long time to come back from the grave, but yeah, we had a great time with you. So next week on Ellen, Oprah gets punched by a dolphin.
What are you doing, Walt? Sit back down.
Fun
Anyway.
fact about me, I am bisexual.
But I actually committed suicide. Walt, get out of my shot! Sorry about that. Anyways, I committed suicide because Walt, stop! I committed suicide just because I was Ellen, stand up. I was very depressed and lonely.